Known online as Pioneers Productions, Randy Stair became obsessed with the cartoon Danny Phantom and was convinced that he'd be reincarnated as a character on the show named Ember. While working a night shift at a grocery store in Pennsylvania, he blocked all the exits, pulled out 2 shotguns, and murdered 3 coworkers before turning the gun on himself in the frozen foods aisle. Police later uncovered a trove of videos and writings outlining his delusions and plans, in which he explained his belief that these murders would allow him to cross over into the animated world of Danny Phantom. During a morning broadcast in 1974, Florida news reporter Christine Chubbuck calmly announced, "In keeping with Channel 40's policy of bringing you the latest in blood and guts, you're going to see another first, attempted suicide." She then proceeded to take her own life on live TV. Many viewers and even people in the control room assumed it was a scripted segment or a special effects stunt. Christine had reportedly long struggled with depression, loneliness, and frustration over the channel's focus on violent topics and sensationalism. Her death completely shocked the nation and remains one of the most disturbing moments in broadcast history. In 2018, 18-year-old Cameron Herron was street racing against his friend before crashing his Mustang into a mother and toddler, killing them both. Here's his reaction to his sentencing of 24 years when he only expected a maximum of 10.
Court's going to adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence him to 9 years in the Florida State Prison. On count 2, same charge, court will adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence him to 15 years Florida State Prison, and that'll run consecutive to count 1, for a total 24 years Florida State Prison.
Nevada's Clown Motel shares its land with an abandoned cemetery, where most of the 300 people buried there either died in a mine fire or from a 1902 plague. In the year 2000, all 4 members of the Setagaya family were stabbed and murdered in their own home. Afterwards, the killer remained in their house for several hours, eating their food, using their toilet without flushing, logging into the family computer, and even taking a nap on their couch. But despite an extensive effort, the killer was never identified. Morbid Olympic Facts, Part 1. After winning 4 gold and 2 silver medals in the 2012 Olympics, making him the most successful Olympic athlete in history, Michael Phelps became deeply depressed. He felt as though his sense of purpose had been completed, and was consumed with so much emptiness that he contemplated taking his own life. Uday Hussein, the son of Saddam, was named chairman of the Iraqi Olympic Committee in 1984. Athletes who disappointed him were subject to torture and imprisonment after the Games. Kelvin Kiptum is the current world record holder for the men's marathon, but sadly passed away earlier this year after driving his car into a tree. If he hadn't been killed, he likely would have become the first person to run an official marathon in under 2 hours. Security guard Richard Jewell saved hundreds of lives by spotting a bomb and alerting police at the 1996 Olympics. He was later wrongly accused of the crime and spent months enduring media slander despite being a hero. The FBI thoroughly searched his home multiple times and maintained 24-hour surveillance of him before Eric Rudolph confessed to the crime. Dr. Fauci's NIH division, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, funded a series of horrific experiments on beagle puppies between 2016 and 2020. One of the most graphic studies involved dogs placed in mesh cages while sandflies were allowed to bite and feed on their heads, allegedly to study how certain parasites are transmitted in hopes of improving treatments for parasitic infections affecting humans. Some dogs were reportedly devocalized to prevent barking and were euthanized at the end of the studies. While Fauci wasn't personally conducting the tests, his agency approved the funding of about $375,000 for the research. Critics, including lawmakers and animal rights groups, condemned the studies as unnecessarily cruel and accused the NIH of lacking transparency and ethical oversight in approving such horrific procedures. The incident sparked widespread outrage online, with many calling for Dr. Fauci to be held responsible for the funding decisions made under his leadership. Just last month, Sheldon Johnson went on the Joe Rogan Experience to tell the story of how he turned his life around after serving 25 years in prison for a minor offense. The same guy was arrested earlier this week for allegedly murdering a man and storing his head in the freezer. In 2017, a group of Maryland college students consumed so much alcohol at a house party that the air in the house registered a reading of .01 on a breathalyzer. In 2003, 2 Australian teens spent 22 hours in a tree above rising floodwaters after a crocodile killed their friend and showed off the boy's body to them. The 13-foot croc then stalked them in the tree all night long until a helicopter finally rescued them the next day. In 1968 Vietnam, Marines William Cox and James Hollingsworth met in a bunker where they vowed to reconnect every New Year's Eve if they survived. The tradition persisted for an incredible 5 decades until Sergeant Hollingsworth sadly passed away. This photo shows Sergeant Cox faithfully standing guard for his comrade one last time. In 2012, tragedy struck when 30-year-old newlywed Maria Pantazopoulos was having some trash the dress photos taken in Montreal while wearing her wedding dress. She was only standing in about a foot of water on a river when her gown became waterlogged, quickly pulling her deeper and deeper underwater as her dress suddenly weighed up to 100 pounds. The photographer did everything he could to save her before Maria cried out, "I can't anymore, it's too heavy," and then she let go. Her body was recovered by a scuba diver 2 hours later. In 2008, a college student from Belgium decided to heat up some leftover spaghetti that had been sitting out on the kitchen counter for 5 days. He told his parents that it tasted strange, but figured it was the new tomato sauce that he added to the pasta. After eating the entire bowl, he headed out to play some soccer but had to return home 30 minutes later while suffering from severe abdominal pains, headaches, and nausea. He then vomited for several hours before finally managing to fall asleep, but he never woke up. The man's lifeless body was discovered the next morning after he died from an extreme form of food poisoning known as Bacillus cereus, aka fried rice syndrome.